Ethan Carson sat at his desk in his office on the 15th floor of GlobalTech Apparel's headquarters, staring out at the sprawling city skyline. The sun had just begun to dip below the horizon, casting a soft golden glow over the city. It had been a long day filled with back-to-back meetings, client calls, and the usual whirlwind of corporate chaos. But today felt different. There was an unsettling tension in the air, something Ethan couldn't quite put his finger on. At the age of 42, Ethan had poured 14 years of his life into this company. He had joined GlobalTech when it was a small, struggling division, barely hanging on. The Eastern Division, tasked with breaking into corporate uniform contracts for regional banks and healthcare companies, was hemorrhaging money. But Ethan saw potential where others saw failure. He'd started with just 9 employees, people who were just as determined as he was to turn things around. In the first few years, he personally drove to every prospect within a 100-mile radius, learning about their pain points, their frustrations with current suppliers, and their unmet needs. Ethan was there for every meeting, every negotiation, and every contract renewal. It was through his tireless efforts that he rebuilt the division, and in turn, built a reputation for GlobalTech. Under his leadership, the Eastern Division transformed from a struggling entity into the top-performing division in the company. The division grew to over 50 employees, moved into a modern office space, and became a key driver of the company's annual revenue. Ethan had done more than just save the division. He had made it the crown jewel of GlobalTech. But now, as Ethan sat at his desk, that same success was about to be swept away. The email notification popped up on his screen. It was from Jackie Harmon, the new CEO who had only been with the company for 8 weeks. His heart sank as he clicked on the message. The subject line read, "Restructuring Announcement. Immediate Changes." Ethan had heard the whispers around the office, rumors of restructuring, of layoffs, of a shift in company direction. But he hadn't anticipated that his position, the one he had fought so hard for, would be on the chopping block. He clicked open the email, his mind racing. The words jumped off the screen like daggers. As part of a company-wide restructuring to maximize shareholder value, we are making immediate changes to our organizational structure. I regret to inform you that your position as Director of the Eastern Division is being eliminated effective immediately. The words blurred before his eyes. Ethan couldn't breathe. The division he had built from the ground up, his legacy, was being dismantled, and he was being pushed out without so much as a second thought. He sat back in his chair, numb. How had it come to this? He had spent years cultivating relationships with clients like Ocean View Financial and Pinnacle Properties, relationships that had brought in millions in contracts, relationships that had weathered storms of corporate turmoil. He had attended funerals for clients' families, worked late nights to ensure that orders were flawless, and gone above and beyond to meet their needs. But none of that mattered now. All that mattered to Jackie Harmon and his team of efficiency experts were the numbers on a spreadsheet. Ethan's phone buzzed. It was a message from his assistant, Keith. "Hey, are you coming to the meeting with Jackie at 3? I heard it's going to be important." Ethan let out a sigh and typed a quick response. "No, Keith. I've been let go. The division's being restructured. I'm done here." There was a long pause before Keith replied. "What? Are you serious? You can't be. You're the reason we're all still here. What are we supposed to do now?" Ethan didn't have an answer. He had no idea what he was supposed to do now either. Everything he had worked for, everything he had built, was slipping through his fingers like sand. By the time he finished packing his personal belongings into a cardboard box, the office had grown eerily silent. His colleagues avoided eye contact, and security stood by the door, waiting for him to leave. He glanced around one last time, taking in the photographs on his desk, pictures of his family, the fishing trophy from his team at Pinnacle Properties, the handwritten note from Diane at Ocean View, thanking him for his quick actions when their order had been rushed through in a crisis.
These small tokens were the evidence of the relationships he had built, of the trust he had earned. but they meant nothing to Jackie Harmon and his vision for the company. As Ethan walked out of the office, escorted by security, he couldn't help but feel the weight of the years he had spent building something that had now been discarded as if it were nothing. He glanced at his reflection in the glass doors as he exited the building and saw a man who had just been erased from the place he had given so much to. The drive home was quiet, the world outside passing by in a blur. For the first time in 14 years, Ethan didn't feel the pressure of managing the division's success, of carrying the weight of clients and contracts on his shoulders. He should have felt liberated, but instead, he felt wrong. At home, his wife, Jennifer, was waiting for him. She handed him a cup of coffee and kissed him gently on the cheek. "What's going on?" she asked, her voice filled with concern. Ethan sat down, staring at his phone, which had been silent all day. He hadn't received a single message from anyone at GlobalTech. Not from his team, not from his clients. He was, in a way, invisible now. "They don't understand what they've done," he said quietly. "I'm not angry. I'm just confused. All those years, all that work. And for what?" Jennifer sat beside him, rubbing his back comfortingly. "You did everything you could, Ethan. They didn't appreciate it, but you'll find your way. You always do." Ethan looked at her and smiled faintly. "Maybe, but I've built bridges for them for so long. I don't know if I want to burn them now." As he sat there, the weight of the day pressing down on him, Ethan made a decision. He wasn't going to fight the system. He wasn't going to beg for his job back. But he wasn't going to disappear either. He had worked too hard, built too much, to let it all go without a fight. He would find a way to move forward, even if it meant starting over. And as he sat there, with his family around him, he made a vow to himself. He wasn't done yet. He would build something that would last. Something that would stand for what mattered most. Real relationships, real value, and real success. The days after Ethan's departure from GlobalTech Apparel were a blur of confusion, disbelief, and a strange sense of liberation. At first, the shock of being let go so abruptly had knocked the wind out of him. But as the days passed, something unexpected began to take root. Clarity. He no longer had to answer to anyone. No longer had to perform under the pressure of corporate mandates and expectations that didn't align with his values. Yet, despite this new freedom, Ethan couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something wasn't right. His phone, which had been silent for most of the day after his termination, began to buzz. The first message came from Diane at Ocean View Financial. "Clayton, we just heard the news. Are you okay? We need to talk about our contract. Please call me when you can." Ethan paused, his fingers hovering over the phone. Diane, one of his longest-standing clients, was more than just a business contact. She was a friend. Their relationship had evolved over the years from professional to personal, with shared birthdays, wedding anniversaries, and even condolences during personal losses. Ethan knew the value of relationships like these, ones that couldn't be measured by a spreadsheet, no matter how much the new CEO, Jackie Harmon, insisted otherwise. Ethan exhaled deeply and dialed her number. The phone rang twice before Diane picked up. "Ethan? What's going on? We heard you were let go." Diane's voice crackled with concern. I'm shocked." "I know, Diane," Ethan replied, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "It all happened so fast. I was told my position was eliminated. Just like that. No explanation, no transition plan. It's a mess." There was a long pause on the other end, and then Diane's voice softened. "We're having our quarterly meeting in 2 weeks," she said. "But after hearing this, I don't know where we stand. We were with GlobalTech because of you. We trusted you. You've always taken care of us. No one else does that." Ethan swallowed hard, the weight of her words sinking in. "I understand. I'm sorry this is happening, but I'm not sure what to tell you about the future. I'm not involved in those decisions anymore." Diane was quiet for a moment, and Ethan could hear the sound of her tapping her pen on her desk. "I need to talk to my team," she said finally. "But I can't promise anything. We've only stayed with GlobalTech because of you. I'll call you back when I've spoken to them." Ethan hung up the phone, a strange sense of calm settling over him. It was the first call from a client, but he knew it wouldn't be the last. As the day wore on, more messages and calls flooded in. Keith, his former design lead at GlobalTech, sent a text. "Ethan, have you heard from anyone? Jackie's asking about your clients. It's a mess here. People aren't giving him the answers he wants." Ethan read the message with a sigh, feeling a deep sense of sadness for the team he had helped build. He had been their leader, their mentor. And now, it seemed, the new CEO's vision for the company would undo everything they had worked for. But even in the face of this, Ethan couldn't bring himself to feel anger. He had always prided himself on handling situations with grace, and he would do the same now. Later that afternoon, he received a call from Harold at Pinnacle Properties. Harold's voice, normally firm and confident, now trembled with uncertainty. "Ethan, what's going on? We just got word from GlobalTech's HR about your departure. Are you okay? We were counting on you for the upcoming contract renewal. You're the reason we stuck with GlobalTech." Ethan could hear the panic in Harold's voice, the same panic he had seen in the eyes of many clients who depended on him. The realization hit Ethan hard. He hadn't just been a project manager or a division leader. He had been the glue that held these relationships together. "I'm doing fine," Ethan said, trying to reassure him. "But as for the contract renewal, I don't know who will be handling it moving forward. The decision was made without any transition plan in place." Harold let out a long sigh, his voice dropping to a quieter, more serious tone. "Ethan, we need you. Without you, we're not sure how this is going to work. I'm going to be honest. We're considering pulling the contract if we don't have some clarity soon. Can we talk more about this? Can we get on a call?" Ethan nodded, even though Harold couldn't see him. "I understand. I'll be here, ready to answer any questions. But I need to be upfront. Things are still in transition, and I'm not sure what direction it's going in." "Just let us know," Harold said, before hanging up. As the day turned into night, Ethan sat at his kitchen table, staring at his phone. There was an odd sense of peace in knowing that, for all the damage the restructuring had caused, the relationships he had built were not so easily broken. But peace didn't change the fact that he had lost his job, and that, for the first time in over a decade, he had no idea what was coming next. The next morning, Ethan woke up early, the quiet of the house settling over him like a blanket. He grabbed his laptop and began searching for new opportunities. He reached out to a few business contacts he had met over the years, asking for advice or guidance. Some had heard about his departure and reached out with words of support, while others had already begun discussing potential openings at their companies. One email stood out among the rest. It was from a smaller competitor, Peak Horizons Outfitters. The email offered Ethan a senior VP role with complete control over client relationships and equity in the company. At first, Ethan hesitated. The familiar feeling of loyalty to GlobalTech tugged at him, but after a moment of thought, he realized that this might be the opportunity he had been waiting for. He would never be able to replace the relationships he had built at GlobalTech, but he could start fresh. He could build something new. And so, with a deep breath, Ethan accepted the offer from Peak Horizons Outfitters. It wasn't just a new job. It was a chance to build something that truly valued what he had always believed in. Relationships over transactions, trust over spreadsheets. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in weeks, Ethan felt a spark of hope. His journey was far from over. The first few days at Peak Horizons Outfitters felt like a blur of new faces, unfamiliar processes, and a whirlwind of decisions to be made. Ethan had barely unpacked his things in his new office before he found himself thrust into a series of meetings with the leadership team, discussing the company's growth strategy and their plans to expand into new markets. Peak Horizons, unlike GlobalTech, was a smaller, more agile company, still on its way to becoming a key player in the competitive outfitting industry. It didn't have the years of bureaucracy or corporate rigidity that Ethan had grown used to over the past 14 years. Here, everyone was on a first-name basis. The chain of command felt more fluid, and the focus was on innovation, creativity, and building lasting relationships. Ethan quickly realized that this was exactly the environment he needed. The CEO, Daniel Thompson, had a vision for growth that aligned closely with Ethan's own values. Daniel trusted him to manage the company's client relationships with the same dedication he had shown at GlobalTech. The autonomy Ethan had been given in this new role was a breath of fresh air. No more red tape, no more corporate jargon. Just real conversations with real people. In the first week, Ethan's phone buzzed constantly. Former clients from GlobalTech, those who had depended on him for years, were reaching out to check on him. Some were concerned about their upcoming contracts. Others simply wanted to catch up and offer their support. Diane from Ocean View Financial called again, and this time their conversation took a more definitive turn. "Ethan, we've been reviewing our options," Diane said, "and we've decided we can't stay with GlobalTech without you. We value our relationship with them, but without you there, it's not the same. We're ready to move forward, but we need to know what our next steps are." Ethan felt a deep sense of pride hearing her words. It wasn't just about the contracts or the revenue, it was about the trust they had in him. He had always focused on creating lasting partnerships with his clients, not just transactional relationships. And now, his clients were showing him that same loyalty. "I appreciate you, Diane," he said, his voice steady. "I can't make any moves just yet, but I promise you, I'm here to support you in any way I can. I want to make sure you're taken care of." As he ended the call, Ethan sat back in his chair and exhaled. It was clear that his past efforts weren't just successful because of his hard work, but because of the genuine connections he had fostered over the years. His clients didn't just see him as a service provider, they saw him as a trusted partner. The next few days were filled with similar conversations. Pinnacle Properties, Bright Healthcare Systems, and Eastern Bank all reached out, expressing their concerns about their ongoing contracts and what would happen in the wake of Ethan's departure from GlobalTech. Ethan handled each call with the same professionalism, never bad-mouthing his former employer, but simply answering their questions with honesty. He explained that he was no longer involved with GlobalTech, but that he was now in a position where he could help them find new solutions. Whether that meant working with Peak Horizons or simply offering advice on how to transition smoothly. By the end of his second week at Peak Horizons, Ethan had already secured several potential clients, people who had previously worked with him at GlobalTech. It was an unexpected but welcome turn of events. He was no longer bound by the corporate politics that had stifled his creativity and passion for client relationships. He was free to work with people who valued his approach and wanted to build something meaningful. Despite his early successes, Ethan knew that the real challenge was just beginning. He was now in a new role, with new responsibilities and a new company that depended on his expertise to grow. But this time, he wasn't going to make the same mistake. He wasn't going to pour his heart and soul into something that didn't value the very relationships he had spent years cultivating. At night, after long days of work, Ethan would sit at the kitchen table with his wife, Jennifer, and they would talk. She listened as he recounted his day, the highs and lows, the clients he had spoken to, and the new possibilities that were emerging. "You know, I never thought I'd see you this excited about work again," Jennifer said one evening as they sipped their coffee. "It's like you've found a new sense of purpose." Ethan smiled and took her hand. "I think I have. For the first time in years, I'm not chasing someone else's vision. I'm building my own, and I'm doing it with people who get it." As Ethan settled into his new role, he couldn't help but reflect on the path that had led him here. The sudden end to his long career at GlobalTech had felt like a devastating blow at first, but in hindsight, it had been the catalyst for his greatest transformation. He had been forced to leave behind a company that no longer aligned with his values, but in doing so, he had opened the door to something far more meaningful. A week later, Daniel Thompson called him into his office. Ethan walked in to find Daniel sitting at his desk, a wide grin on his face. "We've got some good news," Daniel said, handing Ethan a file. "I've been in talks with several of your old clients, and they're ready to make the switch to Peak Horizons. They're impressed by what you've built here, and they want to follow you." Ethan looked down at the documents, his heart swelling with pride. "This is incredible," he said, feeling a mix of gratitude and satisfaction. "But I can't take credit for all of this. It's about the people, my team, our clients. This is just the beginning." "Exactly," Daniel replied. "And it's a new beginning for us too." As the weeks went on, Peak Horizons outfitters continued to grow. The company's reputation expanded, and Ethan's leadership was at the forefront of that success. He wasn't just managing contracts, he was creating a company culture built on respect, transparency, and long-term relationships. One afternoon, as Ethan walked out of the office, he felt a sense of peace he hadn't felt in years. The weight of the corporate world had been lifted from his shoulders, and he was free to build something that truly mattered. He had taken the lessons he had learned from his past, the relationships he had cultivated, and the values he held dear, and he was using them to shape the future of Peak Horizons. As he drove home that night, Ethan glanced at the rearview mirror, reflecting on the road he had traveled. The path ahead was still uncertain, but he knew one thing for sure. This time, he was building something that would last, and that was worth everything.